Welcome to the presentation on the truth on dual or multiple relationship in psychotherapy, social work, counseling, and marriage and family therapy. I'm Ofer Zur, PhD, a licensed psychologist, ethicist, instructor, expert witness, author, and most importantly, anthropologically critical thinker. So here we are. Dual or multiple relationship takes place when a psychotherapy client is also a student, a friend, family member, employee, business associate of the therapist. Needless to say, sexual dual relationship with current clients is unethical and illegal. Back in the 80s, I moved from large metropolitan East Bay in California to a smaller town of Sonoma. And I played basketball, I was a single father, and enjoy life. And then I got a call, probably in the second or third weeks that I moved into town, that a couple was other side and they want to see me for couple therapy in my new practice. And I asked them, how do you know about me? And he said, oh, Dr. Zur, I play basketball with you every Sunday night, and I see you giving hard fouls or getting hard fouls, and I like the way you play. So I protested the hard foul that I give because it's not true. I asked her on the phone, what do you feel about seeing me as a couple therapist when I play basketball with your husband? Every Sunday in an adult league of basketball. And she said, Dr. Zur, I went with you on a field trip with our girls. They were 5-year-old at the time. And I saw how you're negotiating conflict among 5-year-old girls. And I told myself, wow, if he can do 5-year-old girls, he can do my husband and I. So I took it in. This is kind of in the 80s, and or actually early 90s. And I called around all the expert and risk management and my insurance and attorney colleagues, and everybody said, no, dual relationships are unethical. And also it lead to sex. Again, dual relationship are unethical, illegal, and lead to sex. And then I got kind of confused in my mind, and I asked some of them, sex with him, sex with her, sex with both of them. I mean, what are you talking about? So that kind of woke me up into the idiotic idea that dual relationship in a small town is unethical because people tend to choose me because they knew me. So it's kind of start exploring early 90s the whole notion of boundaries and dual relationship, and we'll focus about dual or multiple relationship. I use the same term for both. What's important is that the context, kind of, I was in a small town. So are we talking about business dual relationship, social dual relationship, forensic, supervisory, sexual? What are we talking about? And we can put sexual out. Sexual dual relationship with current client is unethical. And legal or ethical is kind of interesting too. Dual relationship can be ethical or unethical. It can be legal or illegal. To get out of the way, kind of what ethics codes say about it, APA say multiple relationships that would not, that's a code of ethics of APA, multiple relationships that would not reasonably be expected to cause impairment or risk of exploitation or harm are not unethical. So you may have taken a lot of risk management workshop, but now it's clear that it's not always unethical. ACA, Code of Ethics, says that multiple relationship, quote, may be potentially beneficial. Wow. They forget to tell us this in the risk management workshop. Kempf Code of Ethics said that not all dual relationships are unethical and some dual relationship cannot be avoided. And last one for the big group, NASW, says similar to APA, social workers should not engage in dual multiple relationship with client or former client in which there is risk of exploitation or potential harm to client. So we put kind of the ethics part out of the way, that not all dual relationships are unethical. We want to differentiate between concurrent dual relationship, when I see somebody in my practice, at the same time we are also shopping at her store or going to a synagogue with her. Or can be sequential, where we kind of were therapist clients, and then later on we are friends or playing basketball, whatever it is. Intensity of dual relationship can be low, medium, or very intense. It varies. And we'll talk quite a lot today about how it's normal and common in certain setting. So I know I'm kind of talking here to people who most probably heard all the risk management workshop and where dual relationship are unethical or illegal or lead to sex. What's really important to know is that not always dual relationships are unavoidable. In remote community, I guess now with the telemental health, it's a little bit different, but traditionally in remote community, there was no other, you go to therapy with somebody that you know. A big surprise to a lot of ethicists and attorneys, even licensing boards that I've been dealing with for 30 years, that a dual relationship are mandated in military, in prison, and police, sometimes in police. So it's very common in small community when you choose to see somebody who is in your church, or in Alaska village when there is only one therapist in town. Sexual and exploitative dual relationship are unethical and illegal. What's very important, do not enter into sexual dual relationship with current or recently terminated client. Some codes say 2 years after the termination, some codes say 5. So as I noted, there is prevalent, erroneous, and unfounded belief of the slippery slope, that kind of one thing lead to the other, where minor boundary crossing inevitably lead to boundary violation and sexual conduct relationship. So this is kind of a silly myth, completely unfounded, of the slippery slopes, that all boundary crossing will end up with boundary violation. The meaning of boundaries and their appropriate application can be understood only within the context of therapy. So this is very, very important. What's involved in context of therapy? There are 4 main components to context of therapy. 1 is a client, 2 is a setting, 3 is what kind of therapy you do, and 4 is what kind of the therapist orientation, culture, etc. And then there's many types of dual relationship. There's social dual relationship, when we therapists and clients are also friends and have other type of social relationship in person or online. We may be Facebook friends if our Facebook profile is just professional, so it varies with that. Or a social networking, where you have social relationship with the client, which become much more common among the young ones. Then we have a professional dual relationship, where the therapist and client are also professional colleague. They are both teaching in college, they are both in a training institute being therapist, or I bumped into clients that actually to a therapist of mine in professional conferences. Some clients and therapists co-authoring a book about their therapy. Other situations create professional dual relationship as well. A business dual relationship is where a therapist and client are also business partner. It's more complex and needs to be handled with much more cautious. And being employer-employee with your client, I really advise you consult. It's not necessarily illegal or unethical, but it really requires cautiousness. For this, as I'll mention so many times, consult, and consult. And then kind of the most common one is a communal dual relationship or multiple relationship where the therapist and the client live in a small community, the way when I moved to Sonoma or here in Sebastopol, where I'm right now. When I bump into client in the synagogue, I bump into client in lectures or in musical event. So sometimes also in Sonoma, I went to the market and bought some vegetables for my client. And so communal dual relationships are very common and in many ways are healthy because the therapist knows what context you live in. And sometimes seeing you outside the room may be very, very beneficial. And then we have institutional dual relationship, where dual relationships are mandated. For example, the military. When a therapist see a client, soldier in the military, their loyalty, the primary loyalty, is not to the client whom they see, it is to the high command. So, as I give a lecture on moral junctions and stuff, sometimes your loyalty to the high command can help a client stop his hysterical blindness. And that means he may go to the next battle and may even die in battle because, again, the loyalty in the military is to the high command. Similarly, when I was work in a jail, and similar in prison, so that I have the experience that if I hear about a drug deal or I hear about escape route, I have a loyalty to tell it to the prison warden. So again, it's dual relationship where my primary loyalty, like in the military, is to the warden of the prison or the jail. Some police department setting have similar things, that your loyalty is to the high command, not necessarily to the policeman that you help them with their PTSD from the last fire exchange. Mental hospitals are also very hierarchical, and as a clinician in mental hospital, you have loyalty to the higher up in the chain of command. So a forensic dual relationship involves clinicians who serve as treating therapist or an evaluator. It's really highly, highly recommended that expert witness will not be also treater because there is definitely conflict of interest. Treaters are not objective. They are subjective. When we treat somebody, their welfare is what's most important for us, and this is what we are being hired to do. As an expert witness, you have you have to be more objective, and your results of the evaluation of the client may be harmed or isolated, or even put to death, depends what the situation is. So a treater, an expert witness, even though sometimes judges or other attorneys put pressure on us to play these two roles, I highly, highly advise against it, because it's really conflict of interest. Supervisory relationship are inherently involve dual relationship. We have loyalties to the field and loyalties to the client of our supervisees, loyalties to the academic institution if it's in a university. So there is kind of multiple roles, loyalties, responsibility, and function that we as supervisor have. So this is a built-in dual relationship or multiple relationship. A few words about sexual dual relationship is where the therapist and client are also involved in sexual relationship. So sexual dual relationship with current clients are always unethical and most probably also illegal. Some of the code of ethics need to say that you have to have 2 years or 5 years post-official termination. So you cannot just terminate today and be sexual tomorrow. And so it's either 2 years or 5 years, depends on the profession that you can have. Or even then, I highly advise that the client will see an evaluator and I or somebody else will see the therapist, or to know that it was not just a setup and you just held your breath for 5 years until you can have a sexual relationship. I know dozens and dozens of therapists who end up marrying the clients. So you cannot do research on that because they'll be indicted and stuff like that. So you meet people in different places, including in the therapy room. But again, no sexual relationship during therapy or 2 or 5 years after that. Now, what's very common in our day and age is digital, online, or internet dual relationship. So this takes place on online, on computer, on cell phone, social networking sites such as Facebook and Twitter, or blogs or chats or LinkedIn. So there is a lot of dual relationship because people my age still running the show and ethics that did not incorporate well how to deal with social networking between therapist and client. So some code say it's unethical and it's kind of so out of touch with what happened in the world. Professional relationship like LinkedIn on Facebook, depends what on your Facebook, can be even more readily acceptable than on other more social type. And what's interesting is that kind of in California is to change the brochure. Instead of therapy doesn't involve sex, right now they say therapy doesn't involve sexual behavior. This is the 10 to people who have sex online. So that's definitely unethical and illegal, and so it's not acceptable. Some people have a different kind of dual relationship where they have other additional medical services, like you do also muscle relaxation or nutrition consultation or dietary consultation or Reiki. If you do have these two functions, I suggest that you really separate them with two different informed consent and you don't mix them. Because when I work and to defend therapists in board hearing, it would be hard to accept this kind of dual relationship. I one time was involved in a very complex case where a therapist and there was somebody suggested he will adopt a former child client who were put up for adoption. So how to say that there is no power differential or no influential, it was very complex. And I involved other therapists to do an assessment here to know that this adoption may be going forward or not, depends on what's happening. So dual relationship can be very complex and very intricate, at least for me. So a dual relationship can also happen when you refer a friend, when you refer a family member. So many of us seeing the husband and the wife, and sometimes only the wife about her concern and only the husband about his concern. And then the kids come. Many times I saw kids of my clients because they say, oh, you know my parents, so I can talk to you about it. So the children wanted to see me because I knew their parents. So let's kind of also help you differentiate what doesn't involve dual relationship, because some people say, oh, you're making a home visit, it's dual relationship. No, if you have a clinical reason to do a home visit, it's not dual relationship, it's part of therapy. You accompany a client to a dreaded, very important medical appointment. This is a clinical intervention. It's not dual relationship. I conduct sessions sometimes with people who didn't want to be in the office, and walk and talk, I call it, therapy. And definitely there was no dual relationship. It was just session on the walk in a close by trail in Sonoma. Attending wedding, confirmation, bar mitzvah, or school play with a client with a good clinical reasons do not constitute dual relationship. So again, also it's kind of complex with online programs. If it's a professional connection between you and a client, or social networking, LinkedIn, or when it's not social, this will not constitute dual relationship. And again, any kind of session outside the office with a good, clear clinical rationale is not dual relationship. The ethics code of all major psychotherapy professional associations, APA, NSW, ACA, and BCC, do not prohibit boundary crossing. They only prohibit boundary violation. So this is really, really important, and somehow we don't hear about it in our ethics workshop, in most of them. I publish with APA, I publish hundreds of articles on the topic, so you can go to drzur.com and read more and get the fact. What's important to remember about dual relationship, it can be concurrent or sequential. This is kind of good, important differentiation. The other differentiation is it can be low or high intensity, or medium, low, medium, or high intensity. And with sexual relationship, we say, according to your code of ethics, not sooner than 2 and 5 years after therapy. The issue of power in therapy will be a topic for another YouTube recording, but there are a whole bunch of myths that are related to dual relationship. The inherent power differential. That means we are always that powerful. When I go to therapy, I don't feel my therapist has all this power over me. And then we have imbalance of power that we all have heard in our ethics workshop and in a graduate school. Clients' inherent vulnerability. That means all clients, when many of you listening to that in your therapist and you go to a therapist, you don't feel necessarily very vulnerable to your therapist. You just need help on a certain issues. And some other clients are extremely vulnerable. We need to know the difference. So, in summary, dual relationships are not always unethical. They are unavoidable and mandated in certain setting. They can be ethical or unethical. They can be avoidable or unavoidable, like unavoidable in the military and unavoidable on college. Mandated or forbidden, legal or illegal, clinical helpful or exploitative. So you're invited to go to my website, drzur.com, with tons of articles, online courses, videos, audios, and books on the topic of dual or multiple relationship. And you're also invited to write a comment at the end of this YouTube.